GMGP, good morning, good people. Y'all could have been anywhere in the world, but y'all decided to wake up with us. You're sick. You're sick in the head. There's a lot of fantasy football shows out there, but I promise y'all, they not like us. Brock Bowers, you looked a little quicker than fast. What does that even mean? Redraft, dynasty, best ball, high stakes, we got you covered. And that's MVS and Justin Watson with some of the dopest tools designed to help you cancel out the noise and dominate your leagues. If there's a white wide receiver named Antoine, sign me up. Maybe it's cultural. I don't know. In season or off season, rain, sleet, hail, and snow, comma, semicolon, period, next sentence, to bring you the most actionable and entertaining content on YouTube. You don't go buy the dip on the Titanic.
Quarterback that you love, D-Bro. One of the best values in fantasy football.
Prop bets with my man Jay Rich.
Is that yes! Let's go!
So wipe the crust out of your eye, get you a cup of coffee. It's time to wake y'all asses up with Ray
and Jay
in the morning.
My God.
How good is he? There we go. GEGP. What's happening, good people? This is not Wake Up with Ray and Jay. This is Trinity Report Live with both of my boys, Shane and Scott Connor. You know, I asked Jay Rich, can you get us like a 30-second countdown to go? He said it was too damn difficult. So here we are. I had to use the Wake Up intro, but that is okay. We are here to talk through wide receivers. We're going to talk dynasty buys, dynasty sells with two of the best in the dynasty fantasy football game. Y'all know them from their work. Mannequin Chill, Trades in 5, Destination Chill, Scott Connor, Shane Manella on the channel. What's happening, baby? How y'all doing?
Scott.
Shane?
It's late. It's late. We usually we usually do this late. Yeah. Ray's out of his element, right? He's the morning guy.
I'm never doing stuff this late, man. I'm early in the morning.
Yeah, we are usually hitting Mannequin Chill inside our Discord, ddfantasyfootball.com. Check it out. Join the community. Get you a little deal. Maybe we'll post that in the chat later on how you can get a little discount to try it out towards the end of the season. But yeah, we're usually doing Mannequin Chill 8 o'clock, so we're a little later tonight. But yeah, wanted to get the crew back. You guys remember we did the Destination Dynasty episode talking about the sleeper auto sub thing before the season.
Yeah.
And we're like, we need to make this a monthly thing where we do some sort of content, some sort of pod, some sort of video. And then we wait another, 2 months before we did the last show. And then we're going to do it again after week 12. Well, we're after week 14. So we're back. I'm excited for this. This is the home stretch. This last 2 weeks. And then these next 2-3 weeks, especially those of you that don't have a trade deadline. This is the most fun month in Dynasty, starting from like Thanksgiving till Christmas. It is just every league, trades firing off. People only care about winning in the next 2-3 weeks, and that is it. I'm enjoying it, boys.
I like this comment from Chip Diamonds. A lawyer, a litigator, and a South Philly sweetheart walk into a bar. ... That's what you got on this show. Buckle up, strap in. We're talking receivers. We're talking tight ends, and we are trusting Trinity. We're not going to go through all of that again. At this point, if you're watching this live, a lot of people are going to watch this after the fact. You know what it is. It's a score we created. It's on ddfantasy.com that takes all the wide receiver stuff that we like, yards per out run, targets per out run, target share, yak, all that stuff, puts it into one score and allows you to visually see how the player is being used and how that usage correlates to fantasy points and how it factors into that team and where that player ranks in his team. So it's just a visualization tool to describe and show in a visual format the usage on a team, and you still got to make the determination on how you want to proceed with said player. So I went back through and watched the video that we did week 6, week 7, after week 6 of the season, and some players that we discussed on that episode were Rashad Bateman, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Cortland Sutton. We talked Marvin Harrison. We talked about some of the rookies. We looked at the Buffalo Bills situation. We looked at Jamar Chase and good offenses. We looked at the Carolina Panthers and bad offense. But at this point, we're talking dynasty fantasy football, and we're looking ahead. Shane, I know it's the playoff push. We got veterans, and then right after that, it's going to be full steam ahead. Rookies, gearing up for the 25 season. So what we're going to first do is pull up the tool, go to ddfantasyfootball.com, and yes, in the description, there will be a link. If you want to try the tool out for a month, you can get it 50% off using their code. I highly, highly encourage you to do this. Like at this point, now that you're not really trying to figure out start, sit decisions for a lot of people. You're thinking about, who the hell do I want on my roster going into 2025? So let's pull the tool up and talk about one of the hottest names and the hottest players. And if you're watching this video, make sure that you are here in the morning, because old Shane, I mean, I'm just so proud of Shane doing solo content. He is going to do, I think, some of the best content in fantasy football, because we always brag and boast when we're right. But he's going to drop a video. Guys I got wrong, players I got wrong, and that's a humbling thing, but we've all been there, every last one of us. And we're going to talk about one Jackson Smith-Njigba. And Shane, I'm actually going to kick it to you to start this conversation off, talking about JSN, his score, what we discussed, how we're feeling about JSN right now in the great state of dynasty fantasy football.
I mean, probably the strongest endorsement of JSN I can give is that I've been actively trying to trade for him. I quietly started 3 or 4 weeks ago. You know what I mean? Like, it was like a secret girlfriend. I wasn't really telling anyone. You know what I mean? Like, if someone saw me out with her, like, nah, we're friends. We're just friends. I've committed now, though. I've committed. Like, I'm ready to make JSN my girl. As wrong as that sounds, but no, I mean, the dude has done everything you want him to do, right? You see the usage there. We were talking about it before we got on air. I think it flipped around. What was that, week 8? I got bad eyes.
Yep. Week 8 it flipped.
Seattle has a good offensive coordinator, right? Seattle's offensive coordinator looked at some stuff. He's a real football guy. I don't know what he looked at. He's smarter than me, but he looked at some things and said, you know what we're doing? We're using Tyler Lockett too much. You know what we should probably do? Is get the ball in JSN's hand, and we should use him differently. Like, yeah, he's a slot merchant, but you don't just have to throw him underneath dump offs. Like, the dude can do more than that. Let's use him for more than that. And he's been explosive. Like, you cannot knock him. I think he's like wide receiver 13, wide receiver 14, 15, 16. He's right around that range, right? He did what someone that I loved, like Chris Olave, could never do. Take that step forward. And considering where he came from, 8.8 fantasy points per game, 8.3 points per game as a rookie, it's impressive, man. And I know, you look at his Trinity score. That's is that the seasonal one?
This is from week 8 to week 14. So just from around the time we did that show, from week 8 to week 14, this is what he's done.
Yeah, he's bald, right? And that's a big sample size, considering that the football season is only, well, for fantasy, 13 games and then the playoffs, but 17 games. That's a big sample size where he's just taken over and he's the man there, and it's working. So I always look at things like, if a player's smashing in an offense and the offense is working, why would they change that, right? There's no impetus to change it. I feel like this is going to continue. And just as DK Metcalf, just a quick aside, even though DK Metcalf has had excellent Trinity scores the last 3 years, he hasn't really capitalized on it. He really hasn't been that dude. He's been a wide receiver 2, even though his scores suggest otherwise. So I don't think there's anything actually standing in JSN's way from being a wide receiver 1. He doesn't look the role, right? Like DK Metcalf, you take that dude's shirt off and you want to hug him and marry him. JSN's just this little dude, but on the football field, that's all that matters. He's smashing.
Scott, do you think this is a situation where there has been an overtaking of a priority in this offense, or do you still think that DK is, he's still being used at a high clip, that the usage is there, and Shane says it's around where he's kind of always been. What do you make of the flip? And let me just change the data on the screen. Let's go back to weeks 1 through 6. All right, weeks 1 through 6. And I am going to verbatim relay what we talked about at this point. After 6 weeks, once we got here on that video, I said there's 2 ways to look at what JSN is doing. You can look at this and say, man, he's not being used as much as Tyler Lockett and or DK Metcalf, but when he's used in the 5 score usage that he's getting, he's scoring you just as many points, more points than Tyler Lockett, and he was right behind DK Metcalf. He was scoring 12, DK has 14. I said there's 2 ways to look at this. One, he's outproducing his usage, and if he got some more, he probably should still be really, really good. Or is it the case of, this is all they want to do with him? This is all they want to do with JSN. And this is why I think, Scott, the score comparison tool, it's not perfect. And our sample size isn't like the stock market where we have days and weeks and months of data to really form a graph and plots. But for what we have on a week-to-week basis, after week 6, there was a flip in usage for a couple of weeks that showed it's no longer Tyler Lockett in that first, second, third chair. Jackson Smith-Njigba is being used more than Lockett by a significant margin on this team. What do you just make of this situation now moving forward for Dynasty?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting discussion. I think, looking at this from the first half of the season and the second half of the season, like, here's the thing. I'm looking a little deeper at DK Metcalf. First of all, he's never been a guy that you're going to see just take every target in an offense, right? Look at his historic target share. It's like 21% for his career. Yep. So he was never one of these guys, even like Garrett Wilson or Drake London, where even he's getting a couple cheap targets that make up the fantasy scoring when he doesn't get a lot of yak or he doesn't get touchdowns. But then you look at his historical. So here's what I'm noticing. First half of the season versus second half of the season, JSN averaging four yards after the catch per reception, more than DK Metcalf over that span. But DK for his career, way higher than what he's been in those games. So I don't know if that's just a bad luck thing. Is that the type of targets he's getting? Because his Trinity score is still really good in that window when JSN has gone off, right? But if you look a little deeper as, okay, is this something that's going to regress? Is he all of a sudden a worse player than he was when he was 23, 24, 25? Or is this a short-term, I guess what I would look at and say, okay, if I'm playing the dynasty market, JSN is going to be probably wide receiver 10 or higher when the season ends.
Yes.
Like he's going to pass guys like Drake London, Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown. If he continues to be hot and those guys are in situations where there's turmoil, he's in the top 10, right? DK Metcalf is going to start to slip a little bit, like, the change has happened. Yet you look more than just a 6-game sample size. If you're willing to bet against that, they're probably, and Shane can correct me if I'm wrong on this, and the community and the chat can probably say, oh, you're crazy. I'd probably guess that these guys are a lot closer to each other in terms of future production than the market is going to say in this offseason. Versus last offseason, it would have been like DK's way better than JSN. This season, it's going to be JSN's way better than DK. I think you can play the market the other way. And DK's still young enough where I'd be willing to do that for a couple years. So that's my take. It's not negative to JSN. I think the biggest point you hit on, Ray, was Tyler Lockett got out of the way.
Yes.
Which allows both of these guys. If I had to go into next year, looking at DK's historical Trinity and looking what JSN did this year, both of them are very good bets to finish top 20 next year.
Yes.
If I'm being conservative. But if you're telling me I have to put 3-1 odds that it's JSN over DK, give me DK all day. So whatever that means, take it for what it is.
There's this thing in the fantasy space, Shane, that a lot of people are like, all these fancy schmancy tools, the best predictor of future fantasy points is past fantasy points. That's the best predictor, what you did in the past. And this is even better than that because this is specific to the team. It's how they've been used, and it's no subjectivity. It's all just data. 2022, what we're looking at right here is 2022. Full season Trinity score for DK Metcalf. Just look at where he's at. 7.01, 13.5 fantasy points per game, 2022 season, right? Let's filter this to 2023. Look at where DK's at. A slightly higher, 7.45, 15 fantasy points per game. And then currently here on the 2024 season for the entirety, 7.18, 13. This is probably where he is. He's probably a 13 to 15 point per game. And if all the stars align, he can get you 16. He's a wide receiver too. He's a wide receiver too for his team. They can have massive blow up weeks. When I look at this for the full season, DK is doing exactly what he should with his usage, and JSN is still over exceeding based on his score. So JSN is probably really good. DK probably really good. And more importantly, there's nobody else kind of in the way eating up usage and opportunity. Scott, I think you're right. I still like DK. I traded for him today. I don't have expectations that he's a 20-point per game guy. I don't think that's within his range of outcome. He's a 13 to 15 point per game player.
Here's the thing. Early in DK's career, Tyler Lockett was also in that where you're like, he might be better than DK. You know what I mean? There was a stretch where you're like, man, he actually is better than DK, but obviously dynasty asset-wise, he wasn't. And we're kind of looking at the same thing. Like, the dynasty community is always going to prefer the young buck, the guy that's up and coming, the guy that has, I mean, the worst part about DK Metcalf, Ray, what you said, other than his 1 year, I think it was his second year where he went for like, 19 and a half, 20 points. Like, he had an outlier season. Every year since, he's been the same guy. And you know what people don't like? The same guy.
Same guy.
The guy where you go, oh, that's wide receiver 17. That's not fun. That profile is going to fall, and the JSN of the world is going to rise. So how do you want to play that? I guess I just look at the Trinity and go, if you want to tell me that the last 6 weeks is going to be a flip of what their careers look like going forward, then fine. But I got 3 years of data on DK to go.
Right.
He's probably right there.
You have 3 years of data of DK showing you who he is. And like I compared it to the Trinity score, right? I went back like Ray just did, and I went, oh, he should be a wide receiver 1. He should be a wide receiver 1. He should be a wide receiver 1.
Yep.
And this is not to discount DK. I like DK, right? I like him as much as any wide receiver 2 out there. So,
you're right.
But it's just when you continually underperform based on what you should do, that's when it's like, all right, dude, like I have to buy into the fact that this is what you are. Like Ray said, like 13, 16 points per game. Not a bad thing to have, right? It's a good thing to have on your offense. I think we learned that this year more so than ever when you see some of the wide receivers in that range. I'd love to have a DK on my roster. It's just at this point, and this feels crazy to me, but at this point, I'd rather have JSN. Like if I could do DK in a second for JSN, I'm good with that. And it is partly like you said, he's got a shorter track record. So it's easier to go, well, this is going to continue, keep going. The trajectory is just going to keep going that way. Now, if he comes back next year and does the same exact thing and he's still a wide receiver 16, then the conversation will change a little bit because I have a little more data and a little more of him showing me, okay, well, that's who I actually am.
Let's you talked about the young guys and people getting excited about the young guys. Let's do it. We're not going to play around any longer. Let's pull them up. 2024 rookies. Let's pull up the rookies. That was not it. Let's try that again. There we go. The 2024 rookie class. Who have I left off? Let me see. I'm going to just rattle off the names. Tell me, did I leave anybody? We got Marv. Let me move ourselves out of the way so people can see. We got Marv, Malik, Rome, Ladd, BTJ, X-Worthy, X-Leggett, Keon, Vele, Pearsall, Bowers, Sanders. Am I missing? Are there any glaring rookie pass catchers that I don't have on here? Is
Keon?
No, Keon's on there. He's way in the back.
Keon's on there. Okay, I see.
Jalen Polk. No, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you want a big
enough,
no,
don't put him up there. That's embarrassing to him.
It depends on the sample size you're looking for. I mean, you could throw. See, you have AD Mitchell up there.
All right, we'll put AD.
I mean, him and Jalen McMillan have been on the field a lot. Right. I think those are two that are worth putting up there.
All right, there we go. We got Adonai, Jalen McMillan.
Coker's a rookie, isn't he?
Coker?
I don't know if he has enough PT to put up there. Just trying to think of guys. I'm looking at a list of guys that have had enough playing time to make it worth its while. Let's stick with this. I think this is good.
So here we go. Now, for those of you who are like, man, why are some of the names popping up and some aren't? We didn't want to clutter the chart. So if they've scored above a 5 score, you see their name pop up. Above a 5, name pops up. Below a 5, name doesn't. Let's start with low man on the list. Who don't you want moving into next season? Jalen Polk, 2.02. 2 fantasy points per game. All I'll say is historically, this is not the range in which you want to live, and you can't even tell me a good story as to how. I mean, they're already talking about going after T. Higgins. Ricky Pearsall, I would probably segment him out for the full season. I just would. I'm just telling you what I would do. This is weeks 1 through 17. I don't feel great, but I probably would segment it out. Who else do we have back here? JT Sanders, that's a tight end. Jalen McMillan, quite low. Adonai Mitchell, quite low. Jalen Coker, quite low. X-Worthy, quite low. I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to be very honest. 4.5 and below, I kind of just don't want to fool with you. I'm just being very honest. You've got to be able to tell me some lavish story as to how there's going to be more opportunity moving forward. JT Sanders is a little different. Tight end thresholds are much lower. They're graded on the same scale as receivers, so you remove him from the subset. McMillan, I can tell myself a story, right? That Godwin doesn't get better and he somehow is the 2 in that offense and Mike Evans retires. Just by and large, I don't want to deal with those guys, okay? So let's save that cluster to the left and just look at the names that are on the board. You got Keon, Rome, Vele. That means they're all doing good enough as a rookie. That's what you want to see, 5 and above. The big dogs, you got Marvin Harrison Jr., BTJ, Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, and the leader in score, Malik Neighbors, 8.26, 16 points per game. Ladd McConkey, who this type of profile look, when you see this right here, high usage underneath, right underneath that bar, and they're around a 13 point per game. This is where Pickens lived. This is where Terry McLaurin lived. This is where Cortland Sutton lived this year. Like, I like this. This is excellent usage. Just needs some more stuff happening in the offense. Ladd is a buy, in my opinion. We could talk about that. Brock Bowers, the fact that he's at a 7 and this is a scale for receivers is just, he's on another planet. He's on another planet. BTJ, 6.8, 14 points. And then here's Marv, even though it feels like a pedestrian season, 6'6", 11.5 points per game. What do y'all want to talk about? What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the big dogs? Do you want to talk about your pursuit of Rome Odunze or lack thereof moving forward in 2025? Who do y'all want to talk about? Where do you want to go with this conversation? Because a lot of people are going to ask, what are you doing with Marv? What do you do with Odunze? What are you doing with Ladd? Brian Thomas? Shane, I'm going to you first. What you see this and what do you think?
Odunze is the one that intrigues me because the other dudes to the right of him, let me check. Yeah, to the right of him, I kind of know that, or at least I have reason to believe that all these dudes are going to be really good. We could talk about Marv separately because that's kind of its own thing. But everybody to that right, you know they're going to be good, right? Rome is the one where it's like, oof. Like, it literally feels like you could go either way. And, we just talked about, yeah. And we just talked about JSN, and it kind of feels a lot like that, right? They shared the same terrible offensive coordinator, at least for a part of their rookie season. There was an old veteran in the way that hopefully will get out of the way next year, right? A lot of unrealized air yards. There's other metrics that you look at Rome and you go, this dude could kind of be special, I think. So Rome is my guy that I think I'll be pursuing, first of all, because I think the market will end up being a little lower on him. And it's going to be weird for me because he's not going to hit any of the scoring thresholds that I usually look at where I'm like, yeah, this is a dude I want to buy in on. So he's a guy that I'm going to be buying in on. And I think the Trinity scored being just where it needs to be, right? It's not flashy like Malik Neighbors, obviously, but it's good enough where you should believe that he's going to be able to improve and that
yes,
he will be a better receiver when the situation changes. Caleb Williams is a rookie, a rookie quarterback learning to play football in the NFL. And hopefully Caleb Williams is going to get better, which only makes Rome's outlook look better too. So Rome Odunze is my guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the tough part about Rome Odunze is you're still paying the Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas price to get him.
Are you? I think I'm asking. Is that what he's still? Is that his market rate? Is that high?
He's wide receiver 18 on KTC. And here's something I'm gonna throw out there to everybody. Everybody's been talking about this in our Discord and our community for at least a year. It's playing out right now in all of our leagues. But DD especially, and a lot of us are moving towards very much. There is no dynasty anymore. It is, what are you doing for me right now? And if you're not doing something for me right now, you have to have a selling point for me to say somebody else might want what I have, even though that thing's not doing anything for me right now. So let me just address the guys on the bottom left, right?
Okay.
So you got some names down there. I'm just going to give you some where these guys rank in the current KTC wide receiver rankings.
Okay.
And why there's probably some, and I'm not saying to go get these guys, but I'm talking about like the next iteration of these types of players. Let's go. Jalen Polk, wide receiver 70. That's one that's kind of on the bottom end of the tier. Yep. But you still have A.D. Mitchell, wide receiver 53. He's done absolutely nothing to justify being valued that high. Some of the guys that he's above are, it's a crime that he's still valued above that. And why are people still valuing AD Mitchell at wide receiver 53? Because of what, Shane? His draft capital, his name, his
nice uniforms. Those Colt uniforms are really tight.
The point
man.
is, there's nothing other than preconceived notions on him that he should be valued there. But the beauty of having some of these guys, if you had AD Mitchell when Michael Pittman got his back injury, when Josh Downs got injured, when Joe Flacco went in there, if you had Ricky Pearsall when Brandon Ayuk got injured, when he came back, like these guys actually act as their assets. They're assets where you can use something like the Trinity and go, you know what? I may not think that these guys are worth much or they're going to become much. If you're looking at this graph, you're going, what is the hope for Jalen Polk, Ray? Is there any? Like, is there really a bet you make other than what could get a deal done this week, next week? It's
a throw in.
I just got a deal done where I happen to have Luke McCaffrey and Jalen McMillan. And
let's add that Luke McCaffrey in.
Yeah, add Luke McCaffrey. I'm guessing he's going to be he'll be in Jalen Polk territory. Unfortunately,
he's
maybe
below
a little
Polk.
bit higher.
Look at that.
I thought he was a little higher. Okay, but point is, someone was still willing to give me credit for my Luke McCaffrey in a trade because
they like him.
He's a rookie.
His name's ADV, McCaffrey. They like him. Yeah, they
so
think
I think there's
something.
There's some merit, not for these guys to hit, but these are actually assets that you can use if you're going to play this what are you doing for me lately dynasty game. The difference between you being able to get a Cortland Sutton or a Darnell Mooney could just be the fact that you're willing to throw in that Jalen Polk.
Yeah.
Just the takeaway here should be there's going to be a lot of receivers in this upcoming class that probably end up fitting in this range, the bottom left, you know what I mean? Where they get third round draft capital and somebody likes them. But just remember why you're drafting them. When you're going in the third, fourth round of your rookie draft and there's still a guy available, just think about this conversation. That's my takeaway that I've learned. I've gotten a lot of deals done because I'm willing to throw somebody, Jermaine Burton, and don't put him on here, right? I think it's probably way
we're not going to do Burton.
But point is, they're mechanisms to get deals done. And then back to Shane's point, I'm on the opposite end with Rome Odunze. I think if you really had some conviction with using this tool and you wanted to go and get what on this chart, Shane, tells you that Rome Odunze will have a better outcome than DK Metcalf, other than the hopium of there's still time. Like if I told you he has DK Metcalf's career without the 20-point per game season, would you be okay with that?
I'm trading him for DK. I'm trading DK Metcalf to get him, or just in general.
I'm telling you that Rome Odunze has DK Metcalf's career without the elite season.
I get what you're saying.
You can probably get the big plus based on what you said and what the market says.
I hear you, but and someone brought a point up in the chat. I don't remember their name, but they brought up the point in the chat. You can buy Rome Odunze right now. He's someone you can actually buy. You want to go out there and try to buy Brian Thomas Jr. You're paying like 2 firsts. Like people want like 2 firsts for him. Ladd, they're not even moving him because there's not that price. There's not like no one in their right mind is going to give you 2 firsts for him, and no one's going to move him for 1 first. So he's just going to hang out on your team. I can get Rome, and you were talking about being able to use Luke McCaffrey to facilitate a deal. I don't want to compare it this way, but Rome is like one of those dudes, but at the high end. He's like one of those dudes I can get in a trade as a facilitator without having to overpay like for a BTJ. So 5.72 as a rookie, it's not bad. And there's reason to expect that he is going to improve.
It's actually really good. And I think here's CeeDee Lamb after his rookie year. He was a 5.85, scored us about 13 points per game. The bigger thing when you're looking at these charts, and I think this is my philosophical take on usage, and let's just go to Chicago together. I think because looking at Rome isolated is one thing, and this is where the power of the tool is, because you're looking at Rome in the chart, and Shane just said, that's not bad. Like, it's not super flashy. It's not Malik Neighbors. Well, let's look at it in the context of his offense. it's actually really fucking good. When you look at where Rome is compared to everyone else on his team who catches passes, he's at a 5.72. Keenan Allen for the season is at a 6.52. Both of those guys are below the line, and he leads the team in quote unquote usage. DJ Moore second on the team in a 6.21, 13 points. And here's Odunze, pretty much right around 9.5, 10 points. And his usage is right in line with those guys. When I look at Chicago's offense and Odunze's slice of this pie and project it moving forward, no, it does not tell me that he's going to definitely be better than what DK Metcalf is. But this is something that I can trust going into next season, saying, man, they used him in a range where he should have produced like a wide receiver 3, and there was nobody else on this offense that was used like a true wide receiver 1. I'm going to bet on the fact that in another year with Keenan Allen, another year of age, that Odunze is going to continue to climb. To what height, to how high, I do not know. But I am not panicked about his score. Marv, he's right around this Keenan Allen range. Let's just go to Arizona and look at them collectively as a season. It wasn't the season that we thought. He's not going to be some league-breaking wide receiver, and he may never be that. But this score and the way that he was used in relation to everybody else that plays wide receiver on this team, I've got no problem with this going into next season. He's not in the 4s. He's not in the 3s. There is historic data that shows when you're in this range, chances are you're probably a little bit better next year. So the rookie conversation for me, where I'm at, Shane, I'm with you. I think Rome is a buy. I would like to acquire Rome Odunze moving forward. If I don't know what the cost is, I'm not telling you to go do that today. I'm not saying it's the right time. He's somebody that I want to roster in 2025. I'm going to trust the Trinity on Rome Odunze moving forward. I do want to talk about a hot name player. We got to do it. Jerry Jeudy. Go
real
ahead.
Quick, Mike.
I just want to make sure that we get through some more names. What we got?
No, can I argue Keon Coleman is a 30% discount version of a similar range of outcomes to Rome Odunze?
Okay,
and
talk about it. Here we go.
The only difference is people didn't like Keon Coleman and they loved Rome Odunze. That's the only difference. Now, you still have to buy from the Rome Odunze manager and the Keon Coleman manager, and they're more likely to be in the hands of the person that liked Keon Coleman is probably the one that has him in a lot of your leagues, and the same with Odunze. But I look at the two, and I look at the design of their offense this year. I mean, Amari Cooper's on there, but that's a temporary. He was out there the whole year. But I look at the layout of both offenses. I look at some of the other stuff I want to talk about later in the episode, things that I'm kind of cross-referencing that I want to do more work on cross-referencing with the Trinity going forward. I just kind of look at Keon Coleman and go, okay, the difference is just simply Rome Odunze and where he started and what his name value carries versus what Keon Coleman's does.
But you know what?
I'm just throwing it out there
and you know that.
Exactly.
That's dynasty.
Exactly. I just want to throw that out there. I think they're very similar bets. They've done enough based on what you're showing us on the screen to say there's reason to believe that they can, especially neither of them has other guys on their offense where you go, that is Jamar Chase locked in. That is CeeDee Lamb locked in. You know what I mean?
Let me ask both of y'all this question because y'all deal in far more dynasty trade scenarios than me.
Right.
This example that you gave, philosophically, would you rather your 30% savings on the front end or do you want it on the back end? Would you rather save that 30% by buying Keon Coleman first or knowing that the community does prefer and favor Rome Odunze? Would you rather pay for Odunze, see how that works out, know that you've got built-in security on the back end to get out and get your 30% on the way out? Would you rather have the potential outcome that could happen with Odunze in his situation in Chicago, the ADV, the value spike, or would you rather take the savings on the front end and just buy Keon? Because I think what you're saying is true, Scott, but I still feel like I've got far more outs with Odunze. If I've got Odunze on my roster and things don't go well, I feel like I've got more time to let that settle in than I would with Keon Coleman. Shane, it looked like you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, and then you used the word that I wanted to use, outs, right? We're always looking like, what's my out with this, right? You get Keon Coleman and he crashes. Well, you've already talked about the ADV on him's less. So people are going to be like, well, I never really liked him anyway. Like, yeah, his quotes were funny, but that dude was never really good. Rome will get a little more grace period. And then if Rome does hit, if I wanted to flip them, I could flip them for a lot more than I could for if they hit their ceilings of what they could. I think Keon Coleman's ceiling is wide receiver 2. Rome, it's wide receiver 1. And me just saying that, I'm not alone in that thought, right? I think a lot of the community feels the same way. So that tells me right there that if I want to hold one of the assets, I want the one that the community thinks higher of, pretty significant gap in between the two. 30% is not enough for me to not make the deal. Like if someone's like, I'll give you Keon Coleman for a second, or you could have Rome for a first, I'm just going to take Rome for the first. But Scott's going to disagree. I see that grin.
Talk about it, Scott, because the chat said they agree with you. There two things are true. The chat says that Keon is undoubtedly the better value, but here's a comment right here. Keon would need to do more than what Rome would need to see similar value spike. And like Keon would have to do even more to catch you back up to where Rome's perceived value is, regardless of what he becomes.
Okay, so there's a couple things to unpack here. I don't want to we could turn this into a 15-minute theory episode, but the first thing is, and this is something that I'm going to do a Destination Dynasty show on this on the end of the year, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about Mannequin Chill coming up at the end of the show about what the plan is for that. But one thing that I'm willing to bet on, just the way people play Dynasty today, is that, and I'll just ask Shane and then I'll ask the chat to just say yes or no in the chat. Don't need to explain yes or no or why, just put yes or no in the chat. Shane, do you see a, not just good, do you see an elite outcome as a okay probability for either of these receivers? Yes or no?
Yes.
A good probability. You see an elite outcome.
For one of these wide receivers, yes.
But when I say elite outcome, I'm looking at the guy I can put on the trade block, and I'm getting offers of easily 2 firsts or more.
Yes, I see that outcome. I can see that in my head for one of these players, yes.
Okay. If not, can you see it? I'm saying, are you willing to say, there's a 50-50 chance that it happens? Because I think that's the gap here that you guys were talking about with the outs, not just on the negative end, but the positive end. So think about in your current league, what players do you have to just go to the market and compare or command, name the price? There's very, very, very few. So I'm looking at that 30% as, okay, what is the form of that 30% that I'm getting? I agree with you guys. If it's Keon Coleman and the 210 for Rome Odunze, that's not 30%, right? Because that's not in a form that's really helping me.
Right.
If it's Keon Coleman right now and for all of 2025, and I'm starting him in the same spot that I was going to start Rome Odunze, but Shane, the difference is I'm also going to throw in there, I'll give you Tony Pollard in that trade too. Now, you could look at a world where you're going, okay, that 2-for-1 kind of helps me. The only thing that would make that trade bad for you would be if the Rome Odunze outcome was like, oh my God, he's Puka Nacua. You know what I mean? Now I'm wishing I didn't do that. If he's just...
Even if he's just wide receiver 15, even if he's just wide receiver 15, Keon Coleman's wide receiver 37. I don't know why I picked 37.
Okay,
he just feels like a wide receiver 37 to me.
Now the gap between 15 and 37 is you projecting a little bit on the outcomes. Right? I'm saying, what if Rome is 16 points per game and Keon is 13.5? In that scenario, which I'm viewing this as the more likely, okay?
Mm-hmm.
In that case, I'm going to go, man, but you gave me that Tony Pollard to tag along for an entire season. That was the side of the deal. I'm just articulating that 30% matters how you
I get you. There are players right now that score 16 points per game, and then there are players that score 13 points per game. These people exist. They are alive right now doing this. And the feeling and the sentiment for the people scoring 16 points per game is a whole hell of a lot better than the 13 points per game guy. The 13 points per game guy, he's just a jag. He's nobody. I could get him anywhere because people like me and you say that because it's true. I can get that guy anywhere. But this 16 point per game guy, whoa, he's a little harder to get. I don't know how you're going to. I'm not just giving him off my roster to you. The sentiment is worlds apart, even if the points per game is only 3 points per game.
Fair. Okay. All right. No more Rome Odunze and damn Keon Coleman talk. But we are going to get into probably, I think, one of the more difficult ranges at the wide receiver position to navigate in dynasty fantasy football, because all of these players are very good for their teams, very good. Every last one of these players, they have had a 25 plus point game at some point, probably maybe not this season, but over the past 2 years. They've all done it. They've all hit this threshold, and they all have value. They all have value. All right. And the players that I'm talking about, and I'm going to pull up their 2023 usage first. Players that I'm talking about. Let's pull them up. Jerry Jeudy, Terry McLaurin, Tank Dell, George Pickens, Chris Olave, Jaden Reed, Zay Flowers, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Smith. This range of wide receiver twos masquerading and patrolling as wide receiver ones, but some of them can be really good when in a wide receiver one role. This was 2023. This is where they finished at the end of next season. And what the score tells you and what the data we've run shows that if you're in these ranges, where you finished this year, remember the moniker, fantasy points last year is the best predictor of fantasy points in the following year. Well, usage is even better than that, right? When you see how a player's been used, normally a team continues to use that player in that similar role or increase it. You look at this list, look at how many dots are at or below the line. T. Higgins, Terry McLaurin, right kind of below it, 12 points per game. You got George Pickens there, Garrett Wilson well below the line. And yeah, Ricardo, I see you in the chat. Tank Dell, what a disappointment. At the high end, Tank Dell, although he didn't have the highest score, he's 15 points per game, he was outproducing players in his similar range. I mean, just look right down the board. This big cluster of legit wide receiver twos in this range. Let's flip the script to 2024, and we know there have been some situational changes. Look at this. There's been the Trinity worked. Look at that. The usage last year, look at how it played out, and it's happening this season. T. Higgins at the sky high. T. Higgins is up here, 7.37, 16 points per game. Garrett Wilson, I know it hasn't felt like this smash season, but he's still one of the highest utilized wide receivers in the NFL, 7.38. Terry McLaurin's gotten it going late, 7 score. George Pickens, if we flip this for the subset without Justin Fields, he's above the line, but 7.88, 13 points per game. Then you get a drop off. Look at the tier break. Everybody, what are your tiers? What are your tiers? Look at the gap here. It's Higgins, Wilson, McLaurin, Pickens, break. Then you've got Devontae Smith, 6'5", 13 points. Go look at his historical Trinity. This is exactly where he is. This is where Smitty just lives, right here in this range. That's Devontae Smith. If there's a week where A.J. Brown is out, yes, he will explode, but this is where Smitty is. You've got Zay Flowers. Jerry Jeudy's in this cluster. None of this has happened chance. You can go back through Jerry Jeudy's Trinity score from the time he came in the league in 2020 to right now, and it's within a 1-point range of where he's always been. The difference between what's happening now in Cleveland, what has happened for Jerry Jeudy in the past, is the quarterback play, the volume, the opportunity, his health. He's on the goddamn field. In my opinion, and I'll let y'all talk about this cluster, the biggest disappointment for me, and I think two players who are going to hurt the Trinity score, are Jaden Reed and Tank Dell. Unless they just blow up at the end of the season, these are two players Reed scores lower than it was last year, as is Tank Dell. The fantasy scoring is down for both of these guys. So these are two situations where the Trinity did not work so far. And I ask you both this question: why did that happen? What about the score last year from those situations was wonky? What was unpredictable? What should we not have banked upon? Why did we get sucked into this? And I think it's really funny that it's these two, because both of those situations are very, very similar. Very, very similar for the roles that they play and the offenses that they serve. There are some similar parallels between Reed and Tank Dell. But what are your thoughts on this range and this cluster of player in this game that we play, man? Scott, I'll start with you this time. What are your thoughts on this range? And if there are any other receivers that we need to throw in here, I will. But I left JSN off intentionally, and all the elite guys, there's no point in talking about them either. I'm gonna put
Yeah, I
London
mean,
on the screen. Let's put Drizzy Drake on. I think London's above, but let's put London on. London and Addison. I'm gonna put London and Addison on.
yeah, so
Waddle's right here too. Let's get him. Let's just add those guys. Not Braylon Addison, Jordan Addison. There we go. All right, so Waddle. Wow, there's Waddle. We know the situation there, and then Jordan Addison is somewhere in here. It's all clustered. There he is, 6.45, 15 points per game. Talk about it, Scott.
Well, I mean, obviously, you put up a lot of different players in a lot of different stages of their careers. You have guys that are in their 5th, 6th year. You have guys that are in their 2nd year. So it's not all the same. But I think if you're trying to solve this, whether you're using the Trinity or something else, once you've kind of eliminated that we have a receiver that is doing elite shit, like you always say, they're doing the shit that scores points, right?
Yep.
The guys outside of the elite shit range, even if they're not there right now, there's a couple guys on this list, like Garrett Wilson. He's been at the higher end of the list for most of his career, right? So like, once you get outside of that, we're trying to really solve, and I think this is where there's probably the most volatility. This is where there is the most, I think, money to be had if you're playing the dynasty day trading game in the offseason. If you can nail this wide receiver 10 to 40 range, there are values and opinions and profiles all over the place. So I'm just going to talk through kind of what I'm looking for when I go through and I look at all these guys that I've deemed to be outside of the elite range.
Right.
Obviously, the first thing is
are these outside, or who do I need to take off? Should Drake London come off the screen?
Truthfully, Ray, you can eliminate pretty much. You can count everybody in this range below probably the top 7 or 8 receivers in the league,
including London. Correct.
That there's obviously guys at the high end of that tail, like London and Wilson. They're going to carry this mythical value until they don't anymore. But if they continue to be in the range that they're in, guess what they're not going to have in a year or even 6 months? The mythical, they're going to be Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase anymore, right? Like they're not going to have that. So,
but you bring up those 2 players, right? And we talked about it prior to the season in the Discord, the Heisman Discord. Join DD Fantasy. We talked about the changes at quarterback, and what we've seen is there's guys living in a range last year, and something changed for them. And for the most part, the players that had something change, a new quarterback, they got better because clearly the quarterback play was bad. Even Garrett Wilson, even though the quarterback play isn't great, it's still better, leaps and bounds better than what it was last year. Same with Kirk Cousins. It's still leaps and bounds better than what it was last year for Drake London. I think the other guys, right? The other guys in that other clump, it's almost like we're expecting something to change in their production, even though nothing else has changed in their situation. Like their quarterback hasn't changed. No one's left. They don't have a new offensive coordinator. It's like we're just willing and hoping like, all right, well, I know everything's the exact same situation as last year, but they're just going to be better for some reason, and this not like a 2nd year guy, because obviously we expect them to get better, even 3rd years sometimes. But it's like guys that have been in the league 3-4 years, and we're expecting just nothing changes, but we expect their production just to improve just because. So sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I did.
Well, we're going to get into I think we're terrible in fantasy at arguing what the hell is good quarterback play. Yeah, because I'm looking at, there's 2 things I'm starting to look at more with Trinity when I'm trying to determine who is good between the wide receiver 15, 20, 25, 30. Because here's the thing, Ray. All these guys, when the offseason hits, what's going to happen? They're all going to reset, right? They're all going to have new trajectories going into 2025. There's going to be free agents that leave. There's going to be new rookies that come in. There's going to be offensive coordinators that leave, that get hired. There's going to be quarterback changes. So a lot of what we thought we knew, you can throw that out the window. I'll give an example. Tank Dell. What's the one thing about Tank Dell that has changed from this year to last year? Take a gander. There's one thing that has absolutely changed, and people will probably say his QB
is it ADOT?
His dog. No, his QB sucks this year. And it's not the offensive line. It's not the play calling. Their pass rate is higher than last year. Believe it or not, their pass rate is higher than last year. CJ Stroud, if you're looking at the most recent Ben Baldwin quarterback efficiency numbers, 21st in the league. That ain't going to cut it. That is down in the range with Kirk Cousins, with Aaron Rodgers, with Daniel Jones. And you would say what? All those guys shitty quarterbacks, right? Like
Yep.
you can pinpoint the only thing that has hurt, because what's Tank Dell's Trinity the second half of the year? I looked at it a little earlier.
This is not from week 9 to week 14. So once Stephon Diggs is out, here's where he is: a 6.72, 10 points per game.
And you know what? That's not wide receiver 40 like he is, right? That usage right there, Ray, when you see it below that regression line without knowing that CJ Stroud is the quarterback and you see Nico Collins up where he is, wouldn't you guess that maybe the quarterback they have is playing that good?
I don't have to look at anything. I can look at the dots right here on the screen and let you know that the QB play is probably not that good.
So I'm looking at Tank Dell going, okay, everybody else is saying bust, not that good. I think a lot of those comments are coming from the fact they didn't like Tank Dell to begin with, right? They didn't buy into the fact that what he did as a rookie was good. But if they can fix some of the stuff, if they can AKA fix CJ Stroud, I'm right back in next year going, Tank Dell's a wide receiver too. Because that's the one thing that I'm looking at going, that is the problem for a guy like him. You flip it. Let's go to Jerry Jeudy real quick.
Okay.
Jerry Jeudy, he's got a quarterback that in efficiency right now he hasn't played the whole season, but Jameis Winston is 9th. That is ahead of guys like Mahomes, Love, Stafford, Goff, Geno Smith. So he's been efficient with the passes that he's thrown. And then you look at the Browns pass rate, middle of the pack. And in games when they're behind, it's way at the top. So I don't know if there's a big difference between Jerry Jeudy and Tank Dell other than one situation got much better. And it's not the quarterback. I mean, Jameis Winston isn't an all-pro quarterback, but the offense that they're running, the pass rate, whether you want to call it pass rate, game script, whatever, but also the efficiency that he's throwing with, those are the two magical things that I think can elevate these wide receiver 2s, 3s, 4s, but can also kill them. There's a lot of guys on that chart where you could tell me, oh man, they're underperforming. Jayden Reed, guess who has the lowest pass rate in the league, Ray, when they're not more than a 20% win rate? So basically any game that's competitive, the Green Bay Packers are throwing the ball at the lowest rate in the league, 42%.
Well,
so you take that, and then you take Jordan Love, Jordan Love isn't bad from an efficiency standpoint, but he's not Josh Allen. He's not Lamar Jackson. You know what I mean? Like, he's around a little above middle of the pack. That's the reason that Jayden Reed probably isn't smashing. So,
I don't have to look at any Jordan Love statistics to let you all know right now. I don't know where his point per game total is on the season. But this is not an environment in which I want a bunch of pass catchers. This is from weeks 1 through 14. This is Green Bay. Romeo Doubs leading in usage, 6 point.
And who's the one that's still outperforming on the season, at least outperforming what his usage is saying? Basically, he's outrunning the quarterback efficiency that we're talking about to a degree, right? Romeo Doubs. You would say, you looking at this chart, you would go, Romeo Doubs should be doing more. And what's the reason for that? You know what I mean? I don't know.
And when you get to this range, all I'm going to say is you need to look deeper into the point per game total as well. This is points per game, not receiving point. It is just points per game. There's some Jayden Reed rushing touchdowns in there. There's some Jayden Reed scoring. And the difference between buying into this versus buying into JSN, because JSN, didn't we just say at the beginning of the show? I mean, he had a high score. He was outproducing the usage. The difference is there was another guy on Seattle that was getting high-end usage, right? Mm-hmm. There were 2 other players ahead of JSN getting wide receiver 2 to wide receiver 1 usage. Here in this situation, you got one guy being used in a way that should yield low-end wide receiver 1 production, and he's far below that. I'm not as confident buying into Reed moving forward as I would be JSN based on the entire, and then if you really want to break this down and go from, let's go week 8 to, let's go from when we did the show, week 7 to week 14. Here's what's happened in Green Bay. From week 7 to week 14, Jayden Reed doesn't even pop up. He's not even listed. He's below a 5. I'm going to assume this is him right here. That's Tucker Kraft. I was wrong. It's on my site and I'm wrong. I'm assuming this is him. There he is. 4.278 points per game over the last since week 7, and you've jammed them in every week. Every single week you put them in. I'm not telling you to. And the other two who are being used more than him, look at what they're doing. 9 points for Dobbs, 8.5. Jordan Love needs to play better. This is pathetic. He's got to play better. He's got to support his receivers better. And I don't know what Jordan Love has been since week 7, but I can tell you right now, unless he's running a lot, it probably hasn't been very good.
One more name that you had up there that I wanted to just speak on real quick, looking at some of this data together.
Yeah.
I'll put Drake London back up there real quick.
All right. Full season?
Yeah, full season's fine.
Is it fine to put Atlanta up, or do you just want London ice?
No, Drake London. That's fine. Just have Atlanta up there.
Okay.
So here's the interesting thing. The second lowest pass rate in the league, Atlanta. Now, maybe that's their offense. We don't know, right? The quarterback that is in the 40th percentile in terms of quarterback efficiency, Kirk Cousins. So Drake London is still up there with a situation that is worse than Jaden Reed's. Way worse than Jaden Reed's. Now, the reason I wanted to bring up Drake London is I still don't want to say, okay, Drake London can be some elite receiver.
Right.
But what he's doing this year, now, who in here thinks Kirk Cousins can turn it around to what he was in Minnesota? He may or may not get back there. But if he did, or if they made a quarterback change and it looked a little bit different, like what Drake London is doing this year in the environment that he's in an awful environment. We thought the Falcons environment was going to be better. It's been worse with Kirk Cousins than it ever was before. And that's hard to do. But just looking at these two things together, like the Vikings were always in the 55, 56% pass rate with Kirk Cousins, and they're at 43% this year. And he was always an efficient QB. If that can come back even to 80% of what it was, like it's hard to say Drake London isn't a good bet next year to be the guy that you're going to get at wide receiver 12 that you go, oh, wow, he was wide receiver 5, 4.
I'd say you make that bet of regardless of what happens with Kirk Cousins, because if Kirk Cousins continues to play like this, they'll find a way to move off of him, and Penix will be starting.
I think the point is
finally get that quarterback improvement we've been dreaming of.
The dam has to break with the way Kirk Cousins is playing right now, because it's not. Yeah. They're not playing the way that they wanted to when they brought him in, right? Like it's not what Kirk Cousins was in Minnesota. So you're right, Shane. They either go, we're never getting that back, or we get it back and it turns around even better for London. So I just wanted to point him out.
Are there any veterans? Let's wrap with this. Any veterans that you guys are comfortable paying for right now to push that team, that strong contender? Just, I want one more. I want another bullet. I'm gonna put one in the chamber. I'm gonna put one in the chamber, then put my clip in. I need one ready. I need one more veteran wide receiver to get me ready. And you're okay paying the price. You've got Mike Evans out there. You've got Cortland Sutton. You've got Adam Thielen, for Christ's sake. I mean, what veteran old guys that won't? Who do we have? We got Tay Adams. We got Devontae Adams. I'm gonna pull them all up. We're gonna go Adams. We'll go Thielen. Who else will we go? Thielen,
Sutton, Judy. Right? We talked about Judy a little bit.
Sutton. He's still young enough where people still.
That's true. He's only like 25. You're right. Yeah.
What other old guys can we throw in there? Old receivers who are producing. Right. Look at that. Wow.
I got two names that are tricky that I think are.
Good God.
I got two.
Who?
Unless Shane's got more. Shane's got another one. You got any more?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, chat. Give us some old guys. Give us some old names that you could buy that you're thinking about just adding for that push.
This guy has the. I don't want to say the Trinity because we're literally using the Trinity tool. Let's call it the holy offensive trio. This guy's got it. Juwan Jennings.
Oh,
he's got the Trinity.
Oh,
He's got the pass rate. Believe it or not, the Niners are 8th in pass rate the second half of the year. So they're letting Brock Purdy throw probably because they can't run. And Brock Purdy is 5th in quarterback efficiency. So here's I think the problem with Juwan Jennings is people will go, why wouldn't somebody buy Juwan Jennings for a second, right?
No value because after this season.
There's no long-term value. But
no value.
what is the difference if you're buying it into the Trinity? What is the difference between Jauan Jennings and Courtland Sutton?
Well, this is from weeks. Here's week 7 through. What do I need to change it to? Here's we got on the screen. We got Adams.
I'm saying people have talked themselves into, man, I can stomach paying that 112 for Courtland Sutton. And I'm just saying, Jauan Jennings is a guy. If you need a flex
D-Hop
down the stretch,
okay.
D-Hop.
I'd rather pay that price for Jennings than I would. He's got the three things going for him. No, I don't have to pay what I'm paying for Sutton for Jennings.
Yeah.
I think I can get him cheaper, but I think he represents the exact same type of buy if I'm just looking at the last 3 weeks of the season.
But that is people holding on to, well, one has dynasty value and the other doesn't. So everyone assumes next year Jauan Jennings gets ethered when Brandon Ayuk comes back, even though Brandon Ayuk was absolutely dog shit. But people still assume when Ayuk comes back and, maybe when Purcell's not recovering from gunshots, maybe he'll be better. And then Jauan Jennings just recedes to the background like he's been most of his career. I think
Shane, there is stink on every Niners receiver other than Jauan Jennings going forward. And I think
Debo. I added Debo to the list too.
I hear you.
Jennings is one of those guys where you buy for the stretch. You assume he's going to go to 0. You're probably going to have to hold him into the offseason. But we look up next year and we go, man, that guy's a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 2 again. And
three people have noted Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers isn't that old, right? But Jacoby Myers was Jauan Jennings before Jauan Jennings was Jauan Jennings. When Jacoby Myers was in New England, we were like, this dude's probably not. He's pretty good. He's actually pretty good, and that could be, yeah. And it's just he's got a chance to show it in Vegas. Jennings could be that dude next year when Brandon Ayuk is still dog shit. And Ricky Purcell doesn't have, hopefully he's not shot again, but he's also not that good at football. So they're going to need to rely on Jauan Jennings because Deebo Samuel is also not very good anymore. So, yeah, I like the Jauan Jennings buy a lot.
I want y'all to notice something. I want y'all to notice something, right? Every name that we have up here, nobody ISO is going to cost you a first. You probably can buy every one of these players for an ISO second. You not saying you have to or you need to. But all these guys, none of these guys are going to cost you a first. Let me put Mike Evans on the screen. Here's the bigger. This is the last 2 weeks, right? We can go 2-week sample size. Let's change this to 10. Just look at the chart. Look at what's not really going to move, right? That's from week 10. Let's go week 8. From week 8 to week 14. No one's really going to move. You know what this is telling me is all these old guys. If you literally removed all the Malik Neighbors, all the Marvs, all the JSNs, all the Smitties off your roster, and you rolled out Sutton, Jennings, Ridley, Devontae Adams, Adam Thielen, and Jacoby Myers as your wide receiver core, and you got to pick and you just started a combination of them every single week from week 8 to week 14, you'd be in damn good spot. You got a bunch of 16 to 18 point per game players that there have been multiple inside of that range that have had blow-up weeks. I use this because at this point, I traded Adam Thielen today to a contender for Deontay Johnson. My team isn't in it. Why the hell do I need Adam Thielen? I don't think Deontay Johnson's even that good. But that Thielen, that Ridley, that Jauan Jennings, that Sutton, that Devontae Adams, these are players who are all operating as their team's number one. They never move from the far right. They didn't move. Maybe a couple of them went below the line. Maybe one of them fell back a couple of points. But they're operating as the team's primary target earner on their offense. And in fantasy football, ultimately, opportunity and usage is what I'm chasing. The efficiency, we can debate that. Which offense would you prefer? You prefer Hopkins and Mahomes? You prefer Ridley and Levis? I'd take Mahomes over Levis any day. But the point is, opportunity and usage is what we're chasing. When people are telling you Rome Odunze is a league winner, it's like, dude, I like Rome Odunze, right? I think he could be good in the future. But don't sell me on a guy who's not being used in a way to be a league winner to be a league winner. Sure, he might score 2 touchdowns on a week and make you look silly, but by and large, the team ain't using anybody like that. What do you want? What is your goal? What are you chasing? That's what this tool is showing you. It's not telling you 1,000% buy Sutton, buy Judy, buy Jennings, but what it's saying is the team, they're using these guys. And these guys are scoring you upwards of 15, 16 fantasy points per game based on their usage, and they cost you jack shit. Adam Thielen costs you nothing. Juwan, give a shit about their dynasty value. Help me take home that Christmas bacon from my league, and then I'll figure out the offseason in the offseason. How do you
Throw,
I mean, I want to wrap
throw
this.
Hunter
We need to
Henry
do
up
this
there,
more.
Shane.
We
Throw
need to
Hunter
do this
Henry
more.
up there, Ray.
Yeah, well, let's. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
boy.
here's the takeaway. All those names on the list, nobody in here saw any of them coming. Hell, two of the guys on there are products of another player on that list getting traded and going to a situation where they also became the number one. Juwan Jennings, every receiver got injured on his team. Adam Thielen, none of the receivers on the team stepped up. So I think the takeaway with using this is you're not going to be able to find who this cluster of receivers is in July. You may be able to make some educated bets. But what you just said, Ray, if you would have started looking at this in week 6, week 7, and just said periodically every week from week 7 to week 14, I traded away a high-value receiver like Jalen Waddle and went and replaced him with Juwan Jennings, and I did that with the 3 or 4 or 5 high-valued receivers on my roster, you might be sitting with a team that could have 3, 4, 5 of these guys. You got a first for every one of those guys you traded away, and you're still getting the same production. And this is not something we've been able to do historically in this range of receiver. Being able to go, I know when to play that crusty Adam Thielen or Juwan Jennings every week. This at least gives you enough data halfway through next year. This is the power of the Trinity tool. It's probably too late unless you're going to go get those guys on the list, and you're going to have to probably pay another contender to get a couple of those guys unless you find the right team. But the takeaway is this is how you use this. This is how I'm going to use this tool going forward is when I'm in the middle of the season next year, you got to really look at your team and go, okay, is there moves that I can make that embrace the fact that if I don't care about name a player that has mythical dynasty value, but they're not producing anything right now. If I don't care about that, I can literally go and spot next year's cluster like this and go win with them. We've never had a tool like that. That is I'm glad you ended with this, Ray. That is the Trinity tool in a nutshell, showing all of the crusty receivers where you go, man, we all want a couple. You're not going to have all those guys on a team, but we all want 1 or 2 of those guys from that list on our team for the playoffs, not just at their quote unquote value, but we want 1 or 2 of those guys on every roster.
Quickly, and we'll end here, and we're not going to go through all of it today. Tight ends. Maybe this is a whole show for another day, but a lot of people have trouble with the tight end position. We intentionally left this layered amongst receivers to really see how elite those tight ends are. That Dalton Kincaid. Scott, you might have been right a year and a half ago about Kincaid not being this elite asset that we thought. I mean, a 5.87 is very good for the tight end. It's great usage. Look how far below the line he is. I think that's a little bit of the offense, a little bit of Knox. But when I look at this, just off the rip, there are like 3 elite tight ends in the NFL. Like right now, playing today, there are 3 guys. Let's just see if we're right. Trey McBride, do we feel that's an elite tight end?
Yes.
Shane?
Yes.
Scott?
Absolutely.
Yep. We know the 2 at the top for sure.
Yep.
George Kittle? Elite?
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Brock Bowers? Elite.
Absolutely.
There is a massive gap after that. I mean, it's Kelsey, it's Evan Ingram, it's Hunter Henry. There are a lot of names. I mean, this is a whole show for another day because Zach Ertz is outscoring, I guarantee, damn near every other tight end you're jamming in. Cole Kmet, Mike Gesicki, Isaiah Likely.
Will Dissly.
Is another topic for another day. And anybody want to take a guess who the outlier is up there scoring all those points but not getting any usage? Anyone take a guess? Take a guess at that gold dot right there?
Points. No.
No usage, but scoring damn near higher than every tight end in fantasy.
No, it's not Austin Hooper then.
I mean, Tucker Kraft has outpaced his usage a little bit, but no.
He ain't playing no more. He's hurt. He's out for the year.
Well, my mind
is Taysom Hill a tight end?
Taysom Hill.
Taysom.
I mean, that's like the Jaden Reed argument.
You got to take him out. He doesn't count.
3 Trinity score. The 3 score. Somebody said, "Who's that?" Yeah, that's Taysom Hill. That's Taysom Hill. Ricardo, Ricardo, somebody said Stone
I'm
Smart. Ricardo
sorry.
said this, and I want to end on this. We need to do this a little more, but I promised that we'd have you guys out for our families this evening. But I really appreciate this because it's funny he says this, Mike Gonzalez, excuse me, a tool that shows you coach and quarterback trust is really priceless. That's exactly what it is. Like essentially, when you're thinking about what usage is, I mean, that is why you trust it, right? Because it's showing you this is what the team is doing, aka the coach, and here's how effective, efficient the quarterback is. And it's not giving you the minutia, Scott, Shane. It's not telling you this QB's completion percentage over expected is this. It's doing it at its most basic fundamental level. Like he needs to play better. All his goddamn receivers are below the average line of players who are doing this type of route participation. The quarterback, you can go through every team and it's the same. You go to Cincinnati, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins are way above the line because their quarterback is good. CD, you know what I mean? It's really, I implore you all, Scott, Shane, you're all going to have your own interpretation of the data, but it is very, 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 very useful to be able to see how those yards per route run, how it's playing out. And then the decisions that you make, that's a whole nother conversation, can of worms. I do want to attack the tight end position, and we need to do this way more often in the offseason. Just talking through what people are doing, what people are saying, talk ourselves off ledges or talk ourselves into good situations. So let's go ahead. We had a couple of super chat questions that I want to answer really quickly, and then we'll get out of here. Here's one right here from Shane. What's his name here? What's his name? How do you say his name?
Atticus-Kling,
Yeah,
Cunnilingus.
Atticus-Kling. $9, $10 from him. Shane, Scott, Ray, the real Trinity. Appreciate you, my friend. Thank you so much for watching on the stream. And then Matt, what's happening with you, Matt? We can't have a stream without a goddamn start trade question, man. So here it is for you guys. From Matt Glore, non-playoff 1 QB start 7. Trade Mahomes, Tank Dell, and Jonathan Brooks for Trey McBride. What can I add to make sure the deal happens? Next thing, I trade the 102 plus what for the 101?
All right, so it's a start 7. I'll give the next year's first. I'll give you next year's first plus the 102 to get the 101. How's that for Ashton Genty? I know Jay Rich might not agree with that, but that's what I'd be doing on that one. I have so much bias against Mahomes that I can't even rectify that in my mind. What do you got there, Scott?
Oh, it's a 1 QB. He's trading away a quarterback. I assume he has another one. Yeah, we like Tank Dell. We talked about Tank Dell in the Trinity, but in a 1 QB start 7, at best, he's your last guy in, and you're like, hopefully he has a big game. Jonathan Brooks, Ray, you and I have talked about Jonathan Brooks. I have absolutely zero expectations for his career.
Yeah.
All I hope is that somebody else buys into him coming back and being a running back they can use. Dude, to get I don't think everyone realizes how big of an advantage it is to have Trey McBride in a start 7. I don't care if it's a standard league. The fact that you are getting him relative to what everybody else is starting, you could add a first into that deal and it still wouldn't be enough for McBride. So easily McBride. And I'll just say this about the 102 to 101. Ray, you can speak more to like, okay, Ashton Genty versus whoever the 102 is, Tet McMillan or another running back in a start 7 1 QB. The power of that 101 is you get to pick whoever you want. And in a start 7, that is naming your price on any player in the league. So what does it take to get the one? And it might not be Ashton Genty. That's the thing. It could be another guy that lands in the spot where you're like, oh my God, I have to have Tet McMillan as the number one on this, like the Patriots number 1. Maybe that's the thing that everybody chases. But just getting the 101 in that format is literally like having a Chase or a Jefferson or a Bijan. Like that's the type of asset you have.
My 26 and my 27 first. This league probably going to fold by 27 anyway. It's start 7. I'm gonna want to move on anyway. To be honest with you, by then.
This is it. We're gonna end after this. But I don't know if you guys have been asked this question. Shane, I'm gonna start with you. There are people out here who are going to watch this, and everybody wants the elite players. Everybody wants a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, and when you can't get those guys, you kind of go down the list. All right, CD, Amon-Ra, just Have you guys done the data or thought about the difference between spending whatever capital it takes, whatever player it takes to buy that second tier of elite receiver, the Nico, the Amon-Ra, that range? Would you rather spend your capital on that or just use that and go buy Trey McBride? Like, get a true difference-making tight end and leave that range of receiver alone. We'll talk more. We're going to talk tight ends. The next show is going to be tight end Trinity. This is going to set the stage for it. Shane, would you rather spend that capital on the wide receiver 6 through 9 range that have wide receiver 1 weeks, elite range of outcome, but they're not Chase. It's not Jefferson.
Right.
It's not CD. Wide receivers 6 through 9, or would you rather just pay the cost for McBride or Bowers or Kittle or whomever?
Well, especially if we're you give me a range and it's wide receiver 9, I'm taking Bowers, no doubt, over probably any
Puka
wide receiver.
Nacua. It's Puka Nacua.
Puka's not. No. Puka's top 4. He doesn't count.
Okay. Chase, Jefferson, Amon-Ra, Nico, one of them guys are going to be 7 or 8. It's going to be a good name. AJ
I will take Brock Bowers over AJ Brown.
Would you take McBride over AJ Brown?
I would think heavily about taking Trey McBride over AJ Brown, and if my accent didn't sound like this, I would probably just say yes.
Scott?
So this is something I want to be able to articulate to people better, but I think the thing we've lost about with tight ends over the years is, especially now, you already went through the tight end Trinity where there's like 3 guys and then it's just a cluster of everybody else's, right? The power, not just of having the positional advantage. We can all articulate what it looks like to have Trey McBride versus the field, or Brock Bowers versus the field, or George Kittle versus the field. But I don't think people appreciate how it changes your league landscape at the position if you have a Brock Bowers and then you also go and get Trey McBride. You also go and get George Kittle. It's like saying, you ever had a family reunion or something like that where there's like 2 like really, really good meals on the table and then there's just a bunch of other stuff? Like, you want to be one of the people that go and get that 2 or 3 good meals. You know what I mean? Yeah. You're still going to get fed the other stuff, but you want to get because it changes the landscape in your league. Yes, you're getting the 2 elite tight ends. You're getting a guy in McBride or Bowers or Kittle, even at a 1.5 that you can flex, the same as you could a wide receiver 2. Mm-hmm. But what you don't really measure is what has that done to 2 or 3 other teams? Not just they're starting a slightly lower caliber of tight end, right? But what is the byproduct of that, Ray? What happens when a team doesn't have a good tight end? What do? They roster 4 of them.
Yeah.
2 shitty ones because they go, man, I was relying on Noah Fant and Luke Musgrave coming into the season. Both those guys are terrible. I can't cut them, so I'm going to hold them on my bench, but then I'm also going to pick up Will Dissly and trade for Zach Ertz. Now you have a team in your league that's rostering 5 tight ends, and you're saying, really, Shane, do you want to flex Zach Ertz against my Trey McBride? You know what I mean? But I'm creating an inefficiency with the rest of the league by hoarding a position where there's true scarcity. There's not scarcity at quarterback. There's certainly not scarcity at receiver. But if you have Bowers or McBride, and both McBride and Bowers on a team, like, if this continues, you have changed the tight end landscape for the next 3 years in your league in terms of not just the scoring and the WAR production that everybody else gets, but how they're going to treat the position.
And let me say this, and we're closing out, and this will be a topic. You'll notice a big difference too. The difference between the tight end position and receiver, we all know it, man. There's one damn tight end, right? So the usage is either McBride is good or he isn't, but there's not going to be another tight end that takes McBride stuff. It's Trey McBride. It's Evan Ingram. It's the situations where it got sticky. It's where there were 2 good ones. It's Andrews and Likely, and you're like, I don't know what to do, and it makes it so difficult. But I think we need to reimagine how we value this position because it is quite consistent. And then when you have one that is used like an elite receiver, I mean, the advantage you have with a player like that who does this for you, you don't see a bunch of tight ends. There's a few dots on the screen. Teams are really only throwing the ball to one guy. And if you've got that one that's the dominant target earner, it really does change the landscape of your league because there are only a few And you can go back any year you want that have that type of range of outcome on a week-to-week basis. So we will, and you're probably starting a bunch of these guys down here. I guarantee some of y'all are starting some Colby Parkinson, damn Kenny Yeboah. Who's this? Drew
Kenny
Sample.
Yeboah.
My God.
No.
My God. Darnell Washington. Look at Pitsy back here from week 9. Kyle Pitts, 2.49 3 points per game. All right. All right, boys. That's it. That's the show. I said an hour, and we're almost at 90 minutes. We appreciate every eye, each and every ear. Thank y'all for pulling up. We are going to do this more and more, especially in the offseason, where all we're going to do is it's dynasty theory. We're going to talk about it. It's roster construction. It's buying. It's selling. Shane's on the channel. Scott's on the channel. Make sure you guys pull up tomorrow morning for the newest episode of Shane Says and Shane. Just right here, I want to say very, very proud of you, man. You're doing a great job doing this solo thing. Players, I got wrong. Me and Jay Rich may need to do this as well. Kind of talk about some. Look at JSN with that cowboy star and the Dallas skyline right on that right bicep. Good thumbnail, Jay Rich. So make sure you check that out. Scott talked about it. Destination Dynasty. He is wrapping up. I believe you got 2 more positions in your roster construction series. So if you've not checked out the podcast from Monday, make sure you do that. If you got on here late, rewind the show, run it back, check out the last Trinity Live mock draft on the channel. We got Dynasty Theory on the channel. Shane Says tomorrow. ALLGAS Trade Show with Ty and Gabe on Saturday. We appreciate each and every eye, each and every ear. Hit the thumbs up button, subscribe. Wake up with Jay Rich and I on Friday. We're out of this thing. Peace.